Okay. Thank you so much for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. As they so very generously introduced me, my name is Dr. Erica Rooney, and I'm a clinical psychologist with the Child Mind Institute. I work on the Student Success Program, which is the school-based services, the arm of our organization, and I head up our trauma service where we provide in-school trauma treatment to children. Today, as you know, I will be presenting on parent stress reduction in this really unpredictable time of coronavirus. And it has a specific slant for parents and parenting strategies living within quarantine, as well as long-term coping strategies as well. All right. Just want to make an announcement. If any kind of technological problems arise, please feel free to interrupt me and let me know so I can make sure to kind of get things back on track the best that I can. Okay. So we can move on. With any questions that may come up, I'm happy to answer them during the presentation. Or whatever your preference is. If Ms. Mungia would like to collect the questions and then I can answer at the end, that's not a problem. But we will certainly have some time at the end to answer questions that you may have. So if you're not familiar with the Child Mind Institute, just to give you a really brief overview of the kind of work that we do, we are an independent national nonprofit that's dedicated to transforming the lives of children and families struggling with mental health and learning disorders. We, as a team, work collectively. There's about 300 of us that work every day to deliver very high standards of care, advance the science of the developing brain, and empower parents, professionals, and policymakers to support when and where they need it most. The program that I particularly work on, the School-Based Trauma Services, grant funded by the New York City Council and a number of other nonprofit organizations that specifically want to see these types of services provided to children in communities that may have lesser access to evidence-based child and adolescent mental health care. So it's been such an honor to be able to go out into the different boroughs and provide treatment and get to know the schools and the communities and the families in a more intimate way, rather than having them come to us at the at our office. So as you can see here is our three arms of services. Excuse me, let me just take a sip of water. We conduct a whole, we have a whole side of research, clinical care, as well as excuse me, as well as public education, such as this. Excuse me about that. So just to give you an overview of what we'll be talking about today, I wanted to give you a brief introduction to stress, what it's all about, how it shows itself in us in general, and then talk about the impact of COVID-19 and how that's affected all of us across so many different areas of our life. It's been so pervasive and it still continues to be very uncertain. So we want to talk about the combined effects of that in terms of stress and stress management. And then I'll walk you through and give you an overview of a variety of different stress management concepts and skills. I'll give you a general sense of some just basic concepts of wellness that we'll use as a framework to kind of think through all the different areas of the different stress management skills that I'll be providing. And we'll be talking about and focusing in on these three skill areas. I'll start out first with our practical daily living skills, that these are more specifically targeted to the managing life in quarantine under this pandemic. But then we'll also be talking about skills that are more coping on the spot, right on the fly in the short term, based on situational circumstances where we feel very intense emotions and we need to sort of manage them and ride out that wave. And then I'll also be moving into coping over time skills that help to sort of build our resilience over a lifespan. So first, I would just really want to applaud all of you as parents for taking time out of these very busy days today in managing your households, your children, your families, their remote learning, everything, to actually do something in the service of yourselves. And hopefully I can deliver on that. But I really just want to say congratulations and applaud you for taking these steps to helping to improve in any way you can, ways to get through this really challenging time. This is already one but very important step in learning about and how to manage stress. So just wanted to take a self-compassionate moment and let you know you're doing great. These are really difficult, unpredictable times. You're managing far more than you usually do, which is probably much more than, you know, parents are just managing so much these days. And this pandemic has really impacted everybody's ability. They're taking on new roles. There's more competing demands, all that are happening under the same roof. And you're providing nonstop daily care to you and your family, perhaps working from home, managing remote learning, adjusting to all these new life changes. So it's really important that I want to make sure that you can take a moment and congratulate yourselves on that. So first, let's talk about stress, what it is, and how it affects us. So what is stress anyway? It's really, as you know, it's experiences and factors that we encounter throughout our day, our life, that spark an intense physiological and emotional reaction in our bodies. This can happen immediately in just a small sliver of time, or it could build up over time. And those two things can occur, of course, at the same time. We experience stress in our bodies in the same way if it were a negative event versus a positive event. So obviously with things like life milestones, marriages, graduations, all kinds of big life events that can increase sort of our excitement and anxiety can also bring on stress into our lives. It's not always just something negative, but I think it's important to note that any type of increased stress can have these effects on our bodies and minds. But when someone experiences chronic stress, stressors that are continual, that are unrelenting, this can really, over time, alter and really dysregulate our overall stress response system and our ability to cope and manage with things effectively. And it also really increases negative health risks. So multiple medical conditions can frequently arise over time if we can't manage stress in the best way that we can. Our typical responses to stress as human beings, we all are hardwired to include a stress response system. And as you may know, this is what we call our fight, flight, freeze response. That is a built-in alarm sensor to any kind of threat of harm, danger, lack of safety. So this is where we experience rapid heart rate, really heavy breathing, we might perspire, we have really rapid, frequent anxiety or worry thoughts, we become preoccupied with the stressful situation, we may have physiological complaints, stomach aches, headaches, muscle tension. When it's really intense, our hands might shake, we might be pacing around, we might feel irritable or depressed, have difficulty sleeping, and get tunnel vision, where we're really hyper-focused or we're sort of just scanning our environment all the time to make sure we could find a place to escape what we perceive as dangerous. So that's stress in general, but with the impact of COVID-19, there's these combined effects. We can experience stress throughout the day in different varying intensities and waves, but this pandemic has brought on an unprecedented ability to affect us in all areas of life. It's destabilized our individual, our family, collective sense of safety and stability across multiple domains of living. We've all experienced in varying levels rapid and unexpected losses. First and foremost, we have unfortunately have experienced a huge number of loss and death due to this illness, which is the great atrocity of this whole experience, where so many thousands of people have lost their lives due to this illness. But it came upon us in a very insidious way, and there was illness and death. And so we are experiencing, for oneself or close family or friends, the loss of a very close family member or friend, and going through that grief and loss with the added component of perhaps not being able to see that family member prior to their death, or being able to even visit them in the hospital, which greatly impacts our ability to process the loss and the grief from losing this family member or person, that we're very close to. We've also experienced a lot of financial instability. So thousands of people have lost their jobs, or their jobs have been, shrunken, so they have less hours, less income, less savings. Their daily living instability has also increased. Many people have food insecurity. Their housing may be unstable currently due to financial instability. There's been this hoarding of household supplies, so it makes it even more difficult to be able to maintain the hygiene that's required in our homes and be able to even go out and purchase the needed supplies that we really need to protect ourselves, which increases anxiety and stress. And lack of access to reliable transportation. We no longer have the subway system or trains or buses that are operating in the same way that we are used to, and we have make it far more difficult to get to our jobs if we're still able to be working. And certainly as a huge impact, and as you know, school closures and remote learning, this has been a tremendous challenge across so many levels and groups, with the technology challenges, being able to make sure that every student has a device to be working with, and then in the daily stresses of getting our children up and running and trying to learn in the best way that they can under these circumstances. We're disconnected from people that we're very close to, the outside world. These are all areas where we can typically find outlets and ways to manage our stress just by escaping an environment and finding something that brings us pleasure and enjoyment. Planned activities and milestone events are canceled. So there's a tremendous amount of loss on so many different levels that have really compounded the effects of this pandemic. And for you, first and foremost, parents are now forced to take on new roles and multiple roles to manage within their household, all in one place, all these competing demands. So it really requires an expanded range of coping skills to manage these stresses that are flexible, but can also help you adapt to the different circumstances. So I just want to go through a couple of very basic concepts that will kind of serve as a framework to how to understand and think through some of the skills that I'll be teaching and talking about today. Okay. This is a model of conceptual model that we use in cognitive behavioral theory that's based on the scientific principles that our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors are all interrelated and therefore influence each other throughout the day. Okay, so if you just think of that as just a general concept, it makes, I think, good common sense that this is occurring for us throughout the day and often shapes our personality and how we respond to different events that occur throughout the day. But it's an important model to think about in terms of how we manage stress, and I'll show you the next slide to better understand this. Because our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all connected, our feelings of stress can then be managed by targeting the thoughts as well as perhaps the behaviors and actions that might be connected to those feelings of stress and anxiety. Okay. So the feelings of stress as a function of outside factors that are bearing down on us that then influence what we are thinking, feeling, and acting or responding to that stress. Therefore, we can manage the stress by managing our thoughts and actions to help us feel less stressed. Later on, I'll be walking you through some more specific examples of how this works, but I just wanted you to have a general overview of this concept. Our underlying beliefs and our thoughts often lead to unpleasant feelings and negative behaviors. That will then lead us to a negative sense of well-being. So if we can change up in one or more of those three areas, then we're on our way to helping ourselves feel better and feel a little bit less stressed to reduce the impact of it. So having a toolkit of effective stress management skills should really map onto all of these impacted areas. So having some skills that can help manage and modify our negative thoughts and thinking, helping us to ride out very intense emotions, as well as managing and understanding our physiological responses that give us a lot of clues as to what we are feeling in the moment, as well as our behaviors. stress management skills should fall within one or more of these areas. It also requires us to have a diverse range of skills, as I was just saying, in our personal toolkit. One size and type does not fit all in how to combat stress, particularly in these extremely stressful circumstances, to combat these multiple layers of stress. So I'm going to walk you through 3 different areas: these practical daily living skills, coping on the spot skills, and coping over time skills. So first and foremost, I want to start out with the practical daily living skills for managing stress during the coronavirus. I want to make sure that we cover them. And I think that they really kind of make sense and set the stage for the other types of stress management skills. So just in general, coping tips for parents during this time. I'm sure you're familiar with many, if not most of these, but just to validate you and your experience. I mean, this is a new way of being in the world. Your brain has to reset, and it's so important to be able to adjust to that. But that in and of itself is difficult, and to be able to give yourselves a break and know that is the case. Practicing forgiveness and self-compassion is really important and critical. As we have here in this slide, perfectionism and the coronavirus do not mix. So any attempts to really keep trying and thinking you could be doing something better or doing something more is really difficult and challenging and ineffective. It's not helpful. Nobody's perfect, certainly. So it's really important to just sort of take a step back and breathe. This situation is just impossible to try to be the model of something that would be too difficult to achieve under these circumstances. It's important to be able to reconnect with activities that you used to enjoy, even though I know in quarantine sometimes it's very difficult to do, but it is something to maybe think about or try to do in a different way. Enhancing daily living really, I think, does equal less stress. So what does that even mean? It sounds so idealistic and perhaps unattainable. But what I'm really speaking about here is being able to kind of set you, like yourselves and your family, up for the best success that you can try to achieve. Starting with, having a reliable, consistent, yet flexible action plan that everyone can follow. This doesn't mean having something really fancy or sophisticated. It just means having some degree of structure in place in the family that can be flexible with some of these changes that may occur, but that having some sense of structure that everyone is clear about and understands for you as a parent can help increase your parenting sense of control and self-confidence, because Lord knows we can certainly be highly critical of ourselves and negative thinking, and it really can affect our ability to feel like we can do this as a parent, and you are. It's just hard. And it can provide a sense of stability for you and your children having a consistent, flexible plan. Again, as you know, being prepared, staying up to date with information and communication is key about this virus so that you can maintain the best hygiene and take action and be able to provide your children in an ongoing fashion information that will help them to sort of, lessen some of their anxieties and worries. So it's really important to stay informed with credible public health sources. But of course, we say not too much. It's such a fine balance with watching TV and the media, because it's one of the few things that we can do at home. But trying to minimize exposure to the media can be helpful. So balancing that out. It will give you information to assist you in supporting your children, but again, monitoring it so that it's just not the one soundtrack that's going on in the back of everybody's mind. We all need a break from it. But I do encourage you to continue conversations about the topic of COVID-19 and the coronavirus with your children in a developmentally appropriate way, as best you can. Validate their feelings, whatever they may be, even if they're different from yours. And maybe it means just having like a daily or weekly check-in to see just how they're doing about this disease and infection and how they see it over time, because it is changing. But I think it's helpful to have them know that there's a place that they can go to talk to someone about that without feeling judged because they might be confused. But first and foremost, I think establishing some new temporary house rules, or maybe they're rules that you continue on with after we kind of get back to our new normal, is very useful. And I think that if you do that collectively as a family, obviously with the parents sort of maintaining control over what they want to see happen in the family, but giving the kids some control in that, and being clear about what those rules are is really helpful, so that you can always go back to it and refer to it as a way to kind of keep everybody on track. It's important to keep this as a visual list where everyone can see it and refer back to it. And again, nothing fancy, could just be on a piece of loose leaf paper on the refrigerator or wherever it may be, but something that, a set of guidelines that everyone can follow. Tips to support your kids with remote learning. And by doing so, I think this could help in some ways to help support yourself through this process. As I was talking about a visual set of rules, it's also really important to create a visual daily schedule for your household and the kids to follow each day. Again, a simple little checklist or something that is a reliable daily plan for everyone to follow and refer back to in case forgetting occurs, right? Sometimes we all forget, parents as well as kids, but you can always kind of go back to and keeps everybody on track. Setting boundaries for all family members between schoolwork, parents' work, parent self-care, and personal, private, and social time. Having a schedule every day that incorporates a lot of these factors will help everyone sort of manage and know when it's appropriate to reach out to others, or when they need to sort of sit tight and wait for you to be ready when you're able to. The schedule should include meals, fun activities, and downtime to reset. And if possible, adapt it to each child's needs, meaning some children learn differently and at different paces. So perhaps one child may need more frequent but shorter breaks during their studying and schoolwork because they may have attentional difficulties or whatever it may be, but kind of thinking through like what would be most helpful, and seeing if you could adapt it or tweak it just a little bit to help that child, support them at their best. It's really helpful, I think, to sort of emulate what they might be doing in school. So reviewing this daily schedule is almost like a morning meeting format before the day begins, whether it's during breakfast or before, whatever works for all of you. But that can help kind of set everyone up for success in terms of what's expected for the day, right? Because managing expectations is really critical for everybody. You can check off items that are accomplished, whether it's assignments or tasks or even the fun activities. So everyone has a sense of completion and mastery, and that you've gone through the list and you've gotten through the things that you felt were important that day. And if something hasn't been achieved, then you can maybe add it on to the next day's schedule. Really important to sprinkle in fun, easy activities to instill hope and motivation throughout the day while they're doing their schoolwork. And maybe giving children some roles in planning the schedule as well as other activities in the home to help them contribute and feel a sense of mastery themselves. Again, be kind to yourself. It's okay if the schedule does not go as planned. Just reset for tomorrow. Just kind of give yourself like, okay, here's what we did. Here's what we need to do. It's okay. We'll try again tomorrow. And with that daily schedule, subsumed under that is creating a daily schoolwork routine, right? So making something consistent and reliable for children to follow in a quiet, distraction-free location in the home, if that's even possible, because I know that's incredibly difficult to do in most, if not all, homes, especially with everyone under one roof. But if there is limited space, create a schedule for children to use and perhaps rotate through. So if there's like one room that could be quiet or distraction-free, maybe a child uses that for an hour, then the next child can switch out and go in there. So finding, being creative as trying to find ways to help support the child's learning throughout the day. Obviously maintaining a clear study space from distraction and clutter, if that's possible, to the best of your ability, and establishing consistent school learning time. So some schools or most of the schools are sort of operating a little bit differently in terms of how much time they have during the day to be online versus not online. But making sure there's a consistent schedule that the child understands. And I'm sure that you've already established this given sort of but just to keep that in mind if that's something that you've been struggling with. Build in a break schedule, as I was talking about before. You can do it in intervals, like every 20 minutes or after a specific assignment or activity is completed. It's really important to be clear about what the children can do and cannot do during break time so that you help manage their expectations, and that it will just help reduce the stress for you as well in terms of letting them know upfront and letting them know how long they have for those breaks and providing prompts to prepare them to transition back into the schoolwork. And then using when then statements for them, such as like when you finish your math homework, you can play Fortnite, for 15 minutes. Those are really helpful to continue and maintain the structure, of that statement going forward, so they understand that it's a cause and effect situation. And as always, using points or reward system to reward the behaviors you really want to see and encourage motivation for them to continue to do the things that are hard to do. Okay. So those are some practical daily living skills as it relates to being at home in quarantine and working in tight quarters and managing competing schedules and demands of multiple children. But here are some coping on the spot skills. So these are skills that we can use, anyone can use, when we become so overwhelmed with intense emotion that there's no problem solving in that moment. We just need to kind of ride out the wave so that we don't act impulsively on that intensity and do something that we really might regret, or say something we might regret, or just feel like we're coming apart. If we can sort of help reduce the intensity even just a little bit, it's helping you weather that stress and that intense emotion in the moment and helping you get back down to baseline sooner than later. Okay, so as I said, there are short-term situational skills to help manage these emotions. It's immediate distress. It's like when you become super overwhelmed really quickly, right on the spot. So you want to do some things to help ride that wave. What's important to remember in those moments, and it's so hard because our minds are flooded, but doing what works in the moment, not what we want to see happen necessarily, or try to solve the problem or convince or change someone else's mind. That's not likely to happen. Lord knows anger begets anger, and escalation occurs only when we try to fight that battle. So what you can do is do what works best for you and serves you the best in the moment. Only what's needed right now. No problem solving, right? So you want to do something to help bring down the temperature and the intensity of that feelings more effectively, right? So what can we do? A couple of things are to change your body temperature. So we could do this in so many different ways, but we know in the research that if we can physiologically alter the change of our body temperature, whether if we make it colder or even warmer, it actually shifts our emotional, like how we're managing our emotions, and it can lessen the intensity of that emotion at that time. Think of it as almost like, and it gets to point 2 here, is it's a little bit difficult to do 2 things at once. So if we focus on doing some intense rapid exercise to increase our body temperature, or whether we take and hold an ice cube in our hand, some people use frozen oranges or something in the refrigerator, something that we can hold on to and sort of ride out that wave, going into a quiet corner, doing something, whether it's taking a hot or cold shower, something that can bring down the intensity of your body temperature can help to ease the intensity of the emotions. Same thing with distraction activities. Taking a brief walk. If you're home and you can't get outside, walking away or going to another place in your home, in your apartment, that you can at least separate yourself from the interaction that's stressing you out. Maybe it means turning on the TV, watching or listening to a really enjoyable song, listening to comedy. It's actually one that I love to do, especially if I'm sitting in traffic driving, that putting on some of my favorite comics can really shift your gears and put you in a different space. It helps you to sort of let go a little bit more. Doing anything creative, art, writing, painting, whatever it may be. Something just in the moment to sort of have a brief escape. Sorry about that. Another skill that I think is really helpful and we can do at home if you're sort of stuck at home and you're unable to get out is by doing something that you can engage your five senses to soothe yourself, right? So managing intense distress is all about bringing down the temperature of your intense emotions by soothing yourself, right? So doing something that could be calming and soothing, but really engaging in your senses. So we always like to suggest creating like a self-soothe kit, but it doesn't have to be a kit. It could be anything that really heightens your sense of one or more of your five senses, right? Sense of smell, taste, sight, touch. So touching something really soft and really just focusing in on how wonderful that feels, smelling a really enjoyable fragrance. Maybe it's even the smell of hugging your children. Maybe it's something as simple as just, a soap that you have in your home that just smells really good, or a hand lotion, a candle. Tasting something, sometimes when I teach kids in our trauma treatment groups, I have them create self-soothe kits where they, keep a piece of their favorite candy in that kit. And it's only there for when they get really upset. So when they do put it in their mouth, they are just there to focus in on how good it tastes. What are the sensations going on in your mouth? Or something visually pleasing, right? A picture of a favorite memory, a really enjoyable place to visit, whatever it might be. But really to focus in, it's not just to engage and have the item in your hand, but to really zero in on how that's pleasurable and soothing to you in the moment can really help to also lower your stress in those moments. Another type of coping on the spot skill is something we call opposite action. And again, I say this about all the skills, that none of these are I don't mean to say them as so easy and just explain everything away and say that this is something that you can just do and it doesn't require any practice. All of these are hard, and opposite action can be difficult, but it can work if you are focused in on the intention of it, which is and it's similar to distraction in that you're trying to shift gears in your mind to the opposite of what you're feeling. So if you're enraged or upset, and you're just so angry, you want to think of one or three positive qualities or work in opposite of what the emotion you're currently experiencing is. So if it's anger or rage, thinking of something really happy or enjoyable, like 1 to 3 positive qualities or strengths about the stressor, the person, the event, to increase a balanced view, right? So if our children are making us absolutely insane during the day and we're really about ready to explode, it might be helpful to have a few different things sort of that you have lined up in your mind to go to, like the thing, maybe it's how they say goodnight to you, or remembering what it was like to give birth to them, or remembering when you brought them home, or something sweet that they may have done that day, or a gesture or something that can help you see them and have a more balanced view. If it's not your children, if it's something else, try to see sort of the dimensionality of that stressor, if the best you can, right? To see it in a more balanced view. And just by doing that, that can actually lower the intensity of your emotions. Of course, we always like to encourage the use of relaxation techniques. Deep paced breathing is extremely helpful, and that can be done anywhere, anytime, and it's free. And we want to do that in a particular way, which is to take slow, steady breaths in through our nose and breathing for about 4 counts. And then I would say breathing, exhaling out through our nose as well, but for about 7 or 8 counts. The idea being that exhaling for a longer period of time actually activates your parasympathetic nervous system, and it helps, which is the system that helps to slow your body down. It's the opposite to the fight, flight, freeze response. So it's meant to kick in to kind of calm and soothe the body down and bring it back to baseline. So doing some deep paced breathing for 10 deep breaths or even more, whatever is required, is something that you can do on your own if you're on the train, subway, wherever you are, to just sort of reset and help bring in oxygen into your system, which can help slow this process down. Taking a mini imaginal vacation. This is what we call guided imagery. where we use engaging our five senses in a mental visualization of something really calming and pleasing to us. There are so many different kinds of scripts out there, and so I will give you a range of different apps that you can use, or where to seek these out online. But sometimes you can follow a guided imagery script or a recording of this, where they'll take you through, as you know, like walking through a forest and hearing all the sounds of the environment in the woods, or listening to the ocean. Whatever it may be, whatever your safe, calming place is to imagine it and really put yourself there and think through all the different sights and sounds and smells and tastes that would be occurring while you're there. And that's another way to kind of help relax yourself and bring you back to baseline. Of course, doing yoga, stretching, anything calming to sort of slow your heart rate down and to help relieve some of the muscle tension. And of course, if you have faith in your lives, engaging in prayer, spiritual activity, anything that may be relevant for you in that area is always calming for people where faith is very important to them. Okay, so those are the coping on the spot skills, just a brief snapshot of some of the key ones. Of course, there are many others. Now I just want to walk you through some of the coping over time skills. So these are the ones that we're building up our long-term resilience and our coping abilities to get through stressors. So doing all of these, sort of building them into our daily lifestyle and trying to enhance them over time is a way to sort of help when you are on the spot and on the fly and really upset, as well as being able to cope over the long haul. So building emotional resilience can really be achieved throughout your lifetime by strengthening your foundation for coping across those three key areas of the cognitive triangle that I showed you before. We can do this by understanding the function of our emotions and monitoring our emotions and understanding what we feel in the moment, being able to describe and label them, and knowing how we feel and what the ebbs and flows of our emotional experience are throughout the day is a really key factor in understanding ourselves. So building our self-awareness and understanding of our emotions. And I'll walk you through how to do some emotion monitoring. That's a very key area for understanding your emotional self over time. Understanding our thoughts and beliefs and how they influence how we feel and what we do, as I had mentioned before, is certainly key in this area, but I'm going to teach you a way to help to what we call cognitive restructuring, or restructuring our thoughts by checking them and examining them to see how factual they are, and then being able to modify them to a more balanced or helpful coping statement could be another way of building up our emotional resilience. And behavior activation, helping to slowly and gradually increase the number of positive activities and that we can bring into our lives that will help improve and create a positive emotion bank account for you to rely on when sometimes we get depleted in that area. Self-care maintenance we'll also touch on, and enhancing emotional awareness and control through mindfulness practice. So managing our emotions to reduce stress. We're going to go into the first area of the cognitive triangle of our, sorry about that. So just quickly, all about emotions. They are very much connected to our thoughts and behaviors, as I had said. The three key things that are important to know about emotions is that they are vital to us. They are hardwired in our brains as human beings from the beginning of time. And we are meant to feel them as much as sometimes we don't want to. They are vital to us because they give us information. They motivate us into action to try to solve problems, to get through our day, but more importantly, they're there to help us survive, right? Our emotions and understanding them help to communicate to ourselves and to others what we are experiencing and what we are feeling. And the way I think, to differentiate emotions from states of being, like hunger, boredom, tired, is to really be able to say the emotion identified in one descriptive word. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Our emotions are so important to know and to recognize and be able to identify in ourselves, and then label them and describe them, so that we then know, once you know how you feel, you're in a much better position to know how to help yourself feel better. Okay. Identifying emotions, as I was saying, it's so important to be able to identify them, but we don't just feel them in our minds, right? We also feel our emotions in our bodies. And this is, I think, a nice image of showing how we experience the varying emotions. So this must be like a PET scan. I'm not exactly sure. I can't see the caption. But that our body sends us numerous cues that are associated with each emotion that send us those cues to tell us exactly what we are feeling, because sometimes we feel them in our bodies long before we even know what we're actually feeling in our minds, right? So learning to identify the bodily sensations associated with emotions can help us identify what we are feeling, right? So if my heart is beating rapidly, I can't breathe, I'm tapping my foot, I'm staring and moving around, I'm probably going to start to notice that I'm probably feeling a little worried or stressed, right? Or if I'm feeling strong, tense, like tension in my chest, I'm like making fists, I'm like sort of stamping my feet, walking around, I'm furrowing my brow, I'm starting to like grind my teeth, I'm probably getting pretty angry, right? And that can happen in a varying levels and degrees of intensity. Um, so emotion monitoring is a skill that you can start to practice anytime, but it's really keeping a very basic log of what you're feeling and how strong you're feeling it throughout the day. So here we have just a very simple, ledger or log of somebody's experience on a Monday of waking up, right? What the situation is, what emotion you felt, and rate it on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the strongest you've ever felt it, 5 being pretty strong, and 0 being like, I don't feel it at all, right? So noting the situation, what the dominant emotion is, and assigning an intensity rating to it, doing it 5 to 6 times a day or however long you want to. But it gives you a really good indication over time, if you just kept an emotions diary, of kind of what are some of the triggers that are really getting you upset more than others, right? And being able to understand how that's happening over time can give you lots of information to know how to prepare yourself when you walk into that situation again. So noticing patterns, reactions, triggers, this is all very important information that can help you develop and apply helpful solutions to help yourself feel better and manage stress. The next area to target in coping over time is to target our thoughts, as I had mentioned before. And this can definitely help with reducing stress as well, because how we think about something greatly affects how we feel and then the kinds of things that we do. And it can become a vicious cycle, or become a cycle that we can feel like we're in some control with. What's going on here? Uh-oh. So thinking about thinking. So just some fun facts about thoughts. They are temporary. They are fleeting, as you know, they come in and come out. They can be changed. They are not always based on fact. They are not always reliable. They are definitely not always accurate, and they are definitely not always helpful. And I think that it's so important to know that our thoughts are not always facts, because we can believe them as such. And those beliefs, sometimes inaccurate beliefs about ourselves or other people or other things, can really keep us stuck and feeling really frustrated. So making sure that we can check our thoughts and making sure that, is this factual or is this inaccurate? Is this just what we're going to get into? The pattern is, we can find ways to help ourselves feel better. So we can interpret the same event differently, right? Depending on the information we have, the emotional state we are in, what our relationships are with others that are involved, and past experiences. So all of that gets fueled into our our interactions that are coming up, and that can continue to cause us to maintain negative thoughts or negative thinking and beliefs about ourselves and our world. So here's one example of this, right? So one morning before you go into work, you get into a huge fight with your partner. You get to work, and
I'm
your
sorry,
colleagues.
Ms. Rooney.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're intending to share, but you're not sharing at the moment.
Oh, no. It says, okay, how long have I not been sharing? Because right now it looks as though I'm sharing. So
Not very long.
Okay.
I'm seeing just you on the screen now, so I'm just checking in to see if that's what we're doing.
No, no. So let me try to, thank you for letting,
I
what's
think
that?
I
sharing
see the
the
example and I see the thought cloud.
screen that you have to go in order to see the presentation.
I'm sorry, say that again. There was a few people talking at the same time.
There's two screens, one to see you, and then there's another one to view the presentation that you're seeing. So they have to click on the other screen.
They have to do it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, but most others can see this screen on some level? Where it
Yeah.
says example and the like emoji down below?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. But I do appreciate you jumping in and letting me know because I want to rectify that as soon as possible. So again, sort of going back to thoughts and how they can affect how we feel and what we do. One morning before going to work, you get into a huge fight with your partner, you get to work and your colleague arrives about 5 minutes later. He enters the room without greeting you or looking at you. So take a minute and just sort of think about like, what would be your initial thought about your colleague's behavior? Just knowing what you know at face value in that moment and thinking through the fact that you just had this giant fight, right? You had to like get to work, likely feeling really frustrated, and this person walks into the room and doesn't greet you or look at you, right? Does anyone want to share what they might experience with that? What they might be thinking? It's okay if you don't. I mean, I understand there's lots of people on, so it could be difficult to sort of jump in and offer that. But keeping that and holding that thought in mind, I'd like for you to then sort of think about this. An hour later, your colleague tells you that his son was in a car accident last night and he didn't sleep at all. So now think about this situation and what might your thoughts be about his behavior at that point, right? It most likely shifted a bit, right? Because now you have context for why he may have been distracted. He may have had other reasons why he wasn't able to say hello to you, look at you, right? But we can frequently jump to conclusions and think somebody's being rude, right? And sometimes they are, but in this situation, we can see that things can get fuzzy really quickly, especially if thoughts are really affecting and really influence strong emotions. So thing we want to become aware of and start to practice doing, and of course this takes a lot of practice and a lot of time to like sort of really kind of get in the mode of it. But I just want to show you here one example of a negative thought pattern, particularly as it relates to the coronavirus, right? So the event, we want to think about this as the event, that like the triggering event that then puts the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors into motion, right? So the event is school closure because of this pandemic, right? So some thoughts that might be circling around, right, might be, oh my God, I can't manage the stress. How can I help my students? How can I help my kids? How am I going to be like, I can't even get out of bed in the morning. I'm so exhausted, right? And so some feelings that might come up from those thoughts might be a lot of worry, perhaps guilt, shame, frustration, disappointment, whatever the feelings are, right? We can feel so many different feelings at once. And then because of that, and because the thoughts are circling around and the feelings maintain themselves because of the thoughts, you might be very emotionally vulnerable and perhaps lash out at your family members. You might drag your feet and procrastinate with work. You might be eating more because it's so soothing and comforting, right? Or you might have disrupted sleep, right? So being stuck in sort of that negative thought pattern can really, you can see the cyclical effects of that. So for here, the situation remains the same, right? But I just want to show you how this might sort of change up things just a bit if we can sort of change our thoughts a little bit, right? So with the event, the school closure, if we sort of look at our thoughts and we say, you know what, I think I'm just kind of getting a little bit overwhelmed here. This is hard, and I've never really done anything like this before, but I'm just really doing the best that I can. And I'm just going to keep doing that, right? It's probably going to change or reduce the intensity of some of those negative feelings even a little bit, right? So if you're feeling like guilty at like an 8 out of 10, right? Pretty like really high guilt or shame or embarrassment or anger, Even just saying something like that can maybe bring that number down to maybe a 5 or a 6. I mean, hopefully a little bit lower, but even just bring it down slightly can sort of set you up more for success in the rest of your day. You might feel a little bit more encouraged. You might feel more confident or motivated. And then you're more likely inclined to have more positive interactions with your families, or at least not, it can slow down more like impulsive actions, when you're feeling such high levels of negative emotions. So where does this come from, right? So why are we so quick to believe some of these negative thoughts? Well, we have what we call cognitive distortions. Some people call them thinking errors, but every person from time to time might get stuck in one of these. We call them thinking traps with kids, because they're just common negative thinking patterns that people can get stuck in from time to time. But when stress occurs and things really start to, it just really starts to intensify, we can then fall into these thinking traps more quickly and more frequently. So we want to be sure and check our thoughts to make sure we're not falling into some of these cognitive distortions or thinking errors. So some common ones are all or nothing thinking, where you just see things as absolute black and white categories, right? Something is just always the worst or just always the best. It's really hard to see somewhere in between, right? But all or nothing thinking can keep us really stuck sometimes. We can also have overgeneralization, which is sort of viewing a negative event as a never-ending pattern of defeat. Mental filter is when we really focus in on that one thing that is negative about it, and we only dwell on that, and we ignore any positive attributes about a certain experience or event or something about yourself. Discounting the positive. Similar to mental filter, you insist that your accomplishments don't count, they don't matter, you might minimize. Mind reading is a big one, right? Where we think we know what someone is thinking about us, right? But we have no factual information to know that otherwise, right? So we might assume that people are reacting negatively towards us, or they're thinking badly about us, even though they didn't say a word, right? There's fortune telling, where we predict things will turn out badly in the future. And there's also, as I said before, magnification, minimization, where you blow things out of proportion or you shrink their importance down. And minimization can definitely invalidate ourselves and cause us to be confused about how we feel. There's emotional reasoning, labeling, where you identify your shortcomings and you call yourself one really negative, harsh word, or somebody else something really negative and harsh. You use one really intense word to describe something. And then personalization and blame, where you blame yourself for something you weren't entirely responsible for, which can really contribute to guilt and self-blame, or you blame other people and overlook how you may have contributed to a situation to see things in a more balanced way. So how do I combat these cognitive distortions, right? These are going on all the time. They might even be happening more and more now because of all the stress that we're experiencing. Well, it's important to be able to sort of start to notice our thoughts and how they're affecting us. But once we do get a hang of it and notice whether or not we fell into a particular thinking trap, we can come up with a replacement thought that challenges the cognitive distortion. So it's important to distinguish between whether or not something is factual or if something might just be a thought that was developed out of this negative thinking trap, right? So if you do discover that it was just sort of like a negative feeling, but perhaps when you really looked at it, you can see that it's not necessarily fully factual. You can think to yourself this replacement thought or a coping thought that can help balance out your view in the moment and improve how you're feeling. So here we have, if you think of a cognitive distortion as a snake bite, the replacement thought is like the anti-venom. So there's a few steps here for going through this process, which is step 1, you want to identify the emotion and the thought. What's the thought that you're having in your mind? What's the sentence you're saying in your brain over and over that might be fueling this feeling, this negative emotion? And then investigate the thought, right? Is this a thinking error or a cognitive distortion? Is my thought true? Is it realistic, right? Or is it helpful or is it unhelpful?
Ms. Rooney, we can't hear you. Can you please unmute your presentation, slide 1? Nothing yet.
Heredia, can you unmute her?
No, I'm not allowed to unmute anybody.
Gotcha. Miss Rooney, maybe you could go out and come back in and see if that works.
Okay, so she just stepped out. I'm guessing she's gonna try coming back in, so hopefully that will fix that problem.
But we're still not seeing her PowerPoint, just FYI.
Okay.
I see it on the side, but I do not see it on the screen like it was before.
Yeah, that for some reason
Click
the presentation was muted, but she was not.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. So let's
Okay,
see what
great.
happens when you
Let me
present.
see. Let me go back to the screen. My apologies for that. I didn't have the
seconds.
microphone on the screen, so it was hard for me.
No worries.
Ms. Evans, if you click the pin,
Sorry that this
on the
difficulty is
picture,
happening.
you'll get it.
Coming back.
Got it, thank you.
Nope. Let me just scroll through really fast to this. You can still hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. My apologies. Okay,
And
I think
everyone's
this is-
able to see the presentation, correct?
I can now, yes.
Awesome.
Okay, great. So by challenging this, I'm sorry about that, but so I think this is where we were talking about like examining and challenging your thinking errors to replace it with a more realistic thought. So challenging the distortion and seeking out evidence if there's evidence to support your thought or evidence against your thought, right? And if there's evidence against your thought, then you want to know, then you know that's sort of a thinking error and you want to be able to replace it. So then you create a replacement thought that's a little bit more realistic, and then you can sort of take a step back and reassess your emotion.
Ms. Rooney,
so-
we don't hear you. At least I don't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Can
I hear
anyone
her.
else?
I hear her fine.
Okay.
I actually hear you as well.
I hear you too.
Okay, thank you. I'm so
can
sorry.
do it.
I'm not sure what's happening. I guess I'll continue. I don't know what else to do.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So coping replacement thoughts are really just kind of coming up with like a self-statement, a one statement phrase, or something that you can say to yourself as like a mantra or a personal mission statement that can sort of re-inspire you. So you can replace your thought with something that's a little bit more realistic, but you can also sort of have something as a quick, easy go-to, something like, I'm doing the best I can for myself and my family. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. I've managed difficult situations before and I can do it again, or just take it one
Ms.
moment at a
Rooney?
time. Yes. Yes? Hello?
Miss Mooney, you can go ahead. Miss Rooney, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Ms. Munguia might have to go out and come back in.
Okay. So we've gone through two of the three angles of the triangle, right? We've talked about how to manage our emotions through emotion monitoring. We've talked about how to examine our thoughts and reframe them to something, that's more realistic and coping thoughts. Whoops. So now we want to think about targeting our behaviors to reduce stress as well, right? Because our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are so connected. So sometimes just changing up our behaviors can actually influence how we're feeling and then therefore have more positive or realistic thoughts. So behavior has a huge impact on our feelings and thoughts, as I just said, right? So using something we call behavioral activation is a way to kind of build up almost like a positive emotions bank account, right? If we're constantly stuck with negative feelings, right, we want to be able to fall back on and have some emotional reserves, so to speak, positive emotion reserves to be able to counteract negative feelings, right? And sometimes we can be very depleted because we might be, particularly now with being quarantined, right? We might not have the same things that kind of bring us that same level of happiness or pleasure or joy. But by doing small activities, things that kind of boost your mood, improve hope, can help to sort of bring up that level. So if you think of like a legal scale or something like that, right? You want to be able to put some enjoyable moments back into your emotions bank account so that it counteracts the effects of some other negative experiences. So how to do this? Something as simple and it almost seems obvious, but just having a list of positive activities that you can follow, right? The things that feel good, bring you joy, comfort, that connect you to other people. And that's why I think COVID-19 has really impacted us. It's much harder to connect with other people unless they're living with us under our roof, right? And so this is a skill that can be used sort of beyond quarantine, but certainly connecting with others, whether it's through social media or through FaceTime, or even just a good old-fashioned phone call, or even writing a letter, can be really helpful and important task. I actually, just to share a personal moment, my niece and nephew reached out to me and said, Aunt Erica, I want to send your parents, my parents are elderly in their late 80s. They said, I want to, just out of nowhere, said, I want to write them a letter. And they wrote them a letter. I didn't tell my parents, but they separately wrote them a letter. And when my mother got it, she was almost crying. She said, Mackenzie sent me a note, and she put in like a list of her favorite jokes. And this is like a 9-year-old girl. And they were both so touched and so moved that they actually got this handwritten letter, and it really meant something so special to them. And so I think just getting, I'm talking about positive activities, but here this was a positive activity for my niece and nephew, but something that really meant so much to my parents. And it was the simplest thing to do. So doing things where it helps you to connect to others, bring you joy in the simplest of ways, can, I think, help to really bolster your positive emotions bank account. But of course, physical activities, doing sports when we're able to do that, right? Also setting achievable goals for yourself, right? Setting yourself up for success in the short-term future, right? In the long term, over the long haul, right? Picking one activity to focus on just this week. Like, what's one thing that you want to try to do for yourself that's going to be enjoyable, right? Try to identify at least 2 times that week that you can do it. Try to achieve it in your calendar, right? And being very specific about it, right? So it's helping you really achieve this one thing that you feel would be really helpful for you to do. What days of the week, what time, that will really help you to troubleshoot any barriers. Of course, given the circumstances that we're in now, this can be a little bit more challenging, but I think more and more we're seeing so many resources out there where we can access different ways to find positive, enjoyable activities in ways that we didn't even realize before, that we can just do within our own home. Playing a simple game with your child or partner or whatever it might be, but making sure that is there anything that can get in the way or not, right? And then have an action plan to work around that. So that's just sort of a way to kind of help set yourself up to achieve the goal you're looking to achieve in terms of experiencing some positive activities and events. Mindfulness practice, many of you, if not most, are probably familiar with this. This is something that's gaining more and more traction, like out in the world, in the field, as something more mainstream to go to, but certainly is such an integral practice for coping over time, because it does help us to focus on building our self-awareness and our our attentional self-control. It's not a problem-solving skill. It's really a way to, over time, build up your ability to get to know yourself and what you're experiencing just in the present moment. So, and we see even in scientific studies, they're showing like reductions in disruptive behavior and improved attention and concentration in kids and improved academic achievement by kids who are practicing mindfulness on a regular basis has these kinds of effects. And obviously it's been incorporated into a lot of different treatments for children and adults, but even just indulging in this 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day can actually build up over time and really help bolster your emotional resilience. Mindfulness as a concept has been practiced by Zen Buddhists for centuries, I believe. I could be wrong there. But certainly it's something that is a practice and not a skill to be perfected. But really what it means at its core is paying attention on purpose to the present moment without judgment, right? And without judgment being the key piece. When we focus in on just the present moment, we let go of whatever is in our past, whatever is in the future coming up. We're better able to understand what's going on inside of ourselves in the moment. And once we can start to tune into that and start to recognize what we're experiencing, then we're better able to implement any kind of strategy to help ourselves feel better, solve a problem, whatever it may be. So much, particularly like in the last, 10 or 15, 20 years, I would say, there's been so much, everybody's multitasking, constantly on devices, not paying attention to what's going on, hyper-focused on, well, certainly anxieties, worries, depression are all disorders that tend to be focused on worry thoughts that are about the past or the future, right? And so improving our ability to zero in on just what's going on in the moment can help in so many different ways. So I was just talking about some of the long-term benefits. It strengthens our attentional control. If we continue to practice it in multiple different ways, we really build up our mental muscle, and that's where we get the improved focus and self-awareness. It does also help to reduce impulsivity, right? Because if we're suddenly get extremely upset over something, if we are able to tune into it quicker than we may be used to, then we are better able to sort of wrangle in and muster up some sort of skill to manage that more effectively in the moment than to act on it impulsively, right? Improved flexibility and tolerance, right? It does increase our ability for acceptance, letting go of thoughts and emotions more easily. And the practical benefits is that it requires minimal time to invest in practicing it. It can be done anywhere at any time. And there's a wide range of different activities that you can do to practice mindfulness. I don't know where we are on time. I think we're okay. So when we do practice mindfulness, some of the sort of general guidelines are to focus on only one thing, which is the present, being physically present, mentally present, your breathing, just the task at hand, and letting go of, as I said, the sort of past and future worries. We don't want to focus on our thoughts, right? So even though we're human beings, we're going to have thoughts run in and sort of distract our attention, we want to observe them and sort of let them pass without judgment. With emotions, we just will observe and describe them, and we don't want to focus on the past and the future, as I said. We want to really make sure we're not negatively judging ourselves through the course of an activity where we are practicing mindfulness. We don't want to focus on any negative self-judgments or judgment of others during the practice. So in the interest of time, I won't go through the mindfulness activity of the body scan, but what I can do is send a script to Francisca so that she can share it with all of you as a way to just kind of get started. But I will strongly encourage you to look for free apps for your smartphones where you can do all kinds of mindfulness activities that start out with just practicing it for a minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It takes such little time, but it can really have very great long-term benefits. So a body scan is sort of like a simple mindfulness activity where you not only sort of zero in and focus in on the present, but you're also slowly scanning your body and noticing different sensations throughout the different parts of your body so that you can start to notice and what that feels like for you. So I really encourage you to look into practicing some mindfulness activities online. There's so many resources out there that are free, not free, but certainly very accessible now, more and more. Here's how to get started, doing a daily body scan practice. I like this tip of mindfulness reminders, kind of putting things around your house to kind of just prompt you to remember to do it, because we can always forget very quickly. That can be helpful, putting a reminder on your phone. What I really love is making mindfulness a family activity, especially now that you're kind of all under one roof. It could be a great way for you to do an activity together that's fun and new, and it's really modeling healthy coping with your children, right? I mean, you can make mindfulness jars. It's like a glitter jar where your children can do that, and they can just sort of focus in on the glitter floating in the water. There's all different kinds of ways to practice it, but doing something simple, even like a body scan together, can be really fun and new. So here I have 2 apps you may be familiar with, Headspace and Calm, but there's so many others. And there are some that are child-friendly and developmentally appropriate for different ages. Maintaining self-care, right? They don't say this on the airplanes for nothing. Put on your oxygen mask first, right? Before you do for your children in case of there's an accident. And the same thing goes here. And this is one of the hardest things to do, I think, for most parents, most people. It is for me, for sure. But it really is critical, right? If you're not okay and healthy and at an optimal level, it's going to be that much more difficult for you to be able to focus in and help support your children and families. So attending doctor's appointments regularly, as best you can, right? Asking for help and accepting help, that's really critical. I know that that can be a really hard thing to do for a lot of people. But I think one way to kind of combat that is to make requests specific, right? Just giving, it could simplify things, right? Sometimes it feels like we're asking so much of someone, but if we kind of break it down and make it into a specific task, it might be a little bit easier to ask. But more importantly, usually the people we're most close to are so happy to do something for us. Maybe not always, but I think it goes without saying that there's always that sort of shared, right, interaction where you do something for someone and it's sort of like a give and take. So I just encourage you to consider like asking for help and accepting help when it's offered. As it can really relieve some of the burden for something that might not take too much time, but can be like something off your list that you don't have to worry about anymore. Attending to daily physical needs, right? Hydrating yourself, eating healthy food as best you can. That's really hard during these times, but really trying to, as best you can, getting sleep and getting exercise, even if it's just a little bit of exercise. I think being consistent with it is the key to kind of the long-term maintenance of it. Making sure to observe your personal limits is also really key. That's very hard. I think that goes along with the ask for or accept help. It's okay to say no sometimes. You know, as hard as that might sound, or as hard as it might be for people to accept no from us, but it's really important, because without that, you will be too spread thin and feel shattered and depleted. And it's important to be able to say no and say it in a way that's effective. You know, it doesn't always have to sort of turn into a negative interaction with someone, right? It's just a way to say, this is what I need to do for myself right now. Hopefully another time I'll be able to, you know, do this activity with you or whatever it might be. But continue to stay connected, right? Spend time with people or reach out to them through social media channels or the phone, or writing is really critical too for yourselves as parents. So in conclusion, stress is definitely an equal opportunity condition. It affects everybody, but certainly, you know, different people experience it more than others. And it affects all areas of life and functioning, but this pandemic has exacerbated stress in all areas of our life. So it's so important that we continue to pay attention to what we're experiencing each day and how intense it might be for us. But more importantly, this kind of stress must be effectively addressed from multiple angles. So having a wide range of skills, and hopefully the skills that I walked you through today give you a range of different things to be able to help with managing short-term and long-term challenges. It's really the key over time. But a little skill goes a long way. So doing small steps each day over time creates greater resilience for you and for your children and families. Remember, you're the biggest role model for your children too. And so if you want to help them doing that and having them watch and model your behaviors is a great teaching tool for them. And I think lastly, remember, we can't always change our circumstances, particularly when they're so out of control and with this pandemic. But we can help ourselves feel a little bit better and act a little bit more effectively through them. So we have to just be able to ride the wave. Okay, this is a list. I will be sending the slides after we're finished today, so you have a list of resources. But our website, the childmind.org website, has comprehensive resources, particularly as they relate to COVID resources, but just a wealth of information on all other kind of mental health and learning disorders to get support on. But for COVID-19 resources, we're doing twice daily Facebook Live video chats. We have resources in both English and Spanish. The video chats are with expert clinicians on a variety of topics. We have Parenting in the Time of Coronavirus Facebook group. There's daily parenting tips. So if you sign up for our free email newsletter, you'll be able to get those sent to you each day. And we are an out-of-network provider, but we do offer telehealth therapy services for children, teens, and families struggling with mental health and learning disorders. But as I mentioned, the service that I work on, the school-based mental health services, is grant funded. And when we provide services within a school setting, that is free for the families and the schools who have that program for those children. So I hope you found this presentation at least somewhat helpful. My apologies for all of the technical difficulties, but I'm certainly more than happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
So any parent that has any questions, one was.
So how do we do in order to, what's the Facebook page that you have in order for us to be able to follow, I guess, you know, get some information and be able to stay, more than anything, I guess, stress-free? For me, especially, what's really affecting me is the stress and I guess managing, in my case, my kids.
Sure. Yeah, it's so difficult right now. I understand. I totally makes sense to me. So you can certainly go to our website, as I have here, it's childmind.org. And then once there, you'll be able to sort of navigate through and find the various links to click on getting like daily support tips. Mm-hmm. I will say that I sent Francisca numerous like handouts and parenting like support materials last night that she can share with all of you that offer specific tips on how to set up, you know, a daily school routine, how to like self-care for parents, a variety of different handouts. But if there's any specific requests, you can certainly ask Francisca, and I can, you know, reach out to you as well with additional things if we have them available. But I think our website, our Instagram page, all of that is, you know, great because it's constantly ongoing and changing. So I think Facebook, well, here it's the Parenting in the Time of Coronavirus. That's a Facebook group, but just the Child Mind Institute, if you just put that into Facebook, the profile, you know, will come up, and then you'll be able to follow it and like it. Same with Instagram. If it's not Child Mind Institute, it might be childmind.org.
Can you type it into the chat so that way?
Sure.
Mom can see it, and then she's not struggling to write it down.
Sure. Sorry about that. I still had the screen up. So let me go into the chat. Okay, so that's the website. I think if you just in Facebook or Instagram, I'm not really sure what how it's, I mean, I follow all of them and I don't have it in my head, but I think if you just type in Child Mind Institute, the page will come up and you'll be able to log on. But our website is childmind.org. And from there, you'll be able to navigate through, and we'll have like links to all the social media sites, and you'll be able to kind of go through and see so many different types of resources, and also sign up for a free email newsletter where you'll get daily tips emailed to you. I think the opening page, like home page of the website is like the coronavirus parenting support you'll see
I'm
that.
sorry, excuse me. Maybe Miss Munguia, would you hook up with with Nathaniel's mom and maybe just make sure that she gets all the stuff that you have? And
Yes,
that
I
would-
will. No, yes, I will. I have her in my email list, and I shared with her.
We talk about
Perfect.
Yeah, you can share them with
Excellent.
everybody. They're well, you know, they're free for everybody. I'm happy to provide you whatever I can. We have a range of different guides for parenting guides, you know, whether it's traumatic grief, experiencing traumatic events. We have, I mean, a whole host of things, and for other mental health and learning disorders as well. I will also mention to you our Healthy Brain Network. We recently opened an office in Harlem this is like the research arm of our organization, and we provide full comprehensive neuropsych evaluations for free for children as part of our research studies. So the Healthy Brain Network as part of this is something just as I'm just wanting to offer another resource to you for this is for children who may or may not be experiencing any kind of learning disorder, or you want a full diagnostic evaluation that could maybe separate out whether something is more social, emotional, or behavioral, or whether it's, you know, sort of learning related or a little of both. This is a way to get a really full, comprehensive neuropsych evaluation for free. If you're able to participate, they provide, you know, incentives for participating in this study, but it's a really fantastic way of getting such a thorough evaluation at no cost. And you get a full written report. So just to kind of have that in the back of your minds for any educators or parents, I typed that in. You'll also see a link to that on our website too. But I always think it's worth mentioning, especially since we opened an office in Harlem. We only used to have our main office in Midtown and one in Staten Island. Now we have this office in Harlem, and I mean, I'm sure they're swamped, but I think it's really important that we have more and more of these types of sites available to families.
And as far as for the children, like we know we're experiencing stress. What are we doing for the stress for them? I know I send my kids three times outside during the week for them to exercise, just try to be active and release some of that energy they have.
Yeah.
Any suggestions, like what other stuff aside of arts and crafts?
Right. No, I hear you. One thing that you might want to consider is to engage in some relaxation techniques together, like doing some deep breathing, or maybe if you find one of the apps that I had mentioned online, you can do like, because I think it becomes a family activity, but you're also modeling this kind of healthy coping. So whether it's doing deep, what we call belly breathing with children, where I was talking about sort of taking slow, deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth, laying down on the floor and teaching them that, and sort of slowly helping them, guiding them through it, and then practicing it together. Even if you're not upset or stressed, could be one way. Doing some of those guided imagery activities, where I think if you search online, you can find some scripts to read, and then you can kind of help them engage in their like 5 senses in terms of, but also learning ways to sort of help relax themselves. But finding, you can even create like self-soothe kits together. You can, things where it becomes sort of a fun activity, but it's meant to be healthy coping. I would also welcome, you're probably already doing this, but to encourage like talking about how they're feeling and just sort of leaving it as an, let them sort of share the flow of their, like what they're feeling in terms of like, just let it be a sort of child directed conversation, you know, as well, in terms of, what am I trying to say? Like, encourage their ability to be able to talk about things, but if they don't want to take it any further, you can leave it at that. But helping them know that they have a place to be able to come and talk about this can be one way of doing it, or having a check-in session time with them each night where they have an opportunity to just share with you one-on-one about how they've been feeling, helping them to identify what emotions they're feeling. So whatever, any of the skills that may have stood out to you today, sharing that with them and helping them develop an emotional like vocabulary so they're able to better understand what they're feeling and describe it can be another way. I don't know if that answered your question entirely, but I think just helping them know that they have an opportunity to learn some new skills alongside of you and then be able to practice them on their own, whether it's relaxation, whether it's learning to describe and say how they're feeling, and then coming up with some like solutions together to solve any of the stressors that are going on could be some suggestions for you. But it sounds like you might be looking for something a little bit more practical.
I'm looking for something that's going to maybe, it's hard. Kids talk, but they don't talk.
Right. Right. They'll say sort of general statements like, I'm okay, or I'm fine, or I'm sad. Right. Is that what you mean?
I think that she, for some reason,
Yeah, her video
I
dropped.
lost her. Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that.
I'm sure she'll come back in if she can.
Okay. And I'm happy to send you, or I can send her directly, some other resources too. It might not be coming to mind right now, but ways in which she can help kind of build up their emotional language and in a way that could feel fun. You know what I mean?
Even conversation starters.
Yeah. Conversation starters, playing games like feeling charades, right? Where you're sort of acting out what you might be feeling, even if it's not the actual feeling you're feeling, but sort of helping build that like emotional language is really helpful as a way to encourage talking about how they feel down the road, because they need the words and the language first, right? To be able to identify what they're feeling in the moment.
So I would say send those along because it seems like
Okay.
we're gonna use them for
Okay.
those purposes.
Okay, and as I said, I did send Francisca some other support materials as well. So certainly feel free to share those with all of the parents in your community, not just the ones who attended today.
Okay.
And she and I have discussed some other like resources that we have available too. So I think when you signing up for our daily newsletter and for any other parent talks that we offer, I'm happy, it can continue to have a conversation with her. She can stay in touch with Taylor to think about any specific topics that might be useful for parents as well, beyond what we talked about today.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you so very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. I really appreciate being invited to speak with your parents. Your parents in your community. It's been an honor, and I thank you for spending time, and I look forward to possibly working with you all again. Okay.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Take care of yourself. Oh, here's Mom.
Okay.
So I would say if you want at this time, you can exit the meeting and maybe just give Mom a minute to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Good
Thank
evening.
you.
Night.